Well, what have we here? You probably don't think I'm a very nice guy, do you?
There are actors whose presence alone can shift the temperature of a scene, not because they look physically intimidating, but because they look like the kind of guys who already have your weakness figured out. Kurtwood Smith has that energy, the quiet menace, the intelligence, the feeling that if he's in the room, he's in control. Most people today know him as Red Foreman, the king of deadpan insults on that 70s show, but long before he became the world's most beloved grumpy dad, Kurtwood Smith was one of the most fascinating and most versatile villains of the VHS era. He didn't posture, he didn't need to wave a gun around, he simply stepped into the frame and suddenly the story got serious. So today, let's dive into the career of a man who mastered the art of intelligent villainy, a performer who elevated every film he walked into, Kurtwood Smith. But before we get to the iconic roles, let's start with a detail that already sounds like a movie trivia. Yes, his real name is actually Kurtwood. His mother liked the name Kurt, his father's name was Sherwood, so they combined the two and unintentionally created one of the most recognizable names in cult cinema. Kurtwood didn't come into Hollywood as a typical action movie villain actor. He's a classically trained performer with a master's degree in theater, and he spent years on stage doing serious dramatic work. Which might be why his villains always feel grounded and psychologically sharp. He builds them like real characters, not caricatures.
I don't need a history lesson.
Now let's get to the big one. Clarence Boddicker, one of the greatest villains in 80s cinema. Kurtwood originally auditioned for Dick Jones, the corporate antagonist, but Verhoeven took one look at him and said basically, "You're Clarence. Too young for a CEO, but perfect for the street-level monster who thinks like a CEO." One of his most iconic elements, Clarence's glasses, was Kurtwood's own idea. He didn't want to look like a typical action movie thug, he wanted Clarence to look like a cruel accountant, a bureaucratic psychopath, the kind of guy who could be doing your taxes 1 minute and executing your friends the next. That single choice created a brand new villain archetype, the intellectual sadist with glasses. Also, Kurtwood Smith is married to actress Joan Pirkle, who appears in RoboCop as Dick Jones' secretary.
But when I'm done, I've got some free time. Maybe you could, fit me in.
A small but fun bit of trivia connecting his most famous villain role to his real life. Clarence Boddicker isn't a villain because of physical power, he's a villain because of cold, strategic cruelty, and Kurtwood plays him with that perfect mix of politeness and brutality that makes him unforgettable.
Shit. Just give me my phone call.
Then we shift from futuristic Detroit to the quiet horror of real life. In Dead Poets Society, Kurtwood plays Mr. Perry, father of Neil, the boy whose dreams are crushed under the weight of parental expectation. There are no guns here, no explosions, no cackling, just a man whose emotional rigidity is so suffocating it becomes its own form of villainy. Mr. Perry is terrifying because he's believable, he embodies the kind of everyday tyranny that many people have actually lived through, and Kurtwood plays him with restraint that makes the character even more chilling. Now here's a curveball in his filmography, a role that looks like it should follow the same pattern, but doesn't. In Rambo 3, Kurtwood plays Robert Griggs, a field operative at the US Embassy in Thailand. On paper, he's similar to characters like Major Murdoch from Rambo 2, high-ranking officials assigning dangerous missions. But here is the difference. Griggs is not a villain, he's actually honorable, straightforward, and he genuinely respects Rambo. He even warns Rambo that if he gets captured or killed by the Soviets, the system might abandon him, not out of malice, but out of ugly political reality. It's refreshing to see Kurtwood play an authority figure who isn't corrupt or treacherous, especially in a franchise where government suits are usually the real enemy. As Hollywood moved into the 90s, casting directors discovered Kurtwood's secret weapon. He is phenomenal at playing calm, dangerous authority figures, the kind who ruin your life with a signature instead of a bullet. In True Believer from 1989, he plays a morally dubious prosecutor, another example of Kurtwood's talents for playing power structures that feel way too real. In Company Business from 1991, he plays a shady CIA operative with that classic "I know more than you" demeanor. He also appears in Broken Arrow as Secretary of Defense Charles Baird, one of the officials scrambling to respond to the nuclear crisis. Then comes one of the greatest VHS-era guilty pleasures, Fortress. Kurtwood Smith plays prison director Poe, a cold, bureaucratic villain who enjoys his job way too much. This is peak authority figure who likes pressing buttons that hurt people.
Your sentimentality is touching.
And the movie itself, a cheesy, over-the-top sci-fi prison flick with surprisingly great set design and a perpetually miserable-looking Christopher Lambert. Also, the script feels like it was written on the way to the set. It's dumb, it's 90s as hell, and it's absolutely delightful, and Kurtwood fits right in, giving the film a villain who feels smart, cruel, and wonderfully overbearing. Kurtwood Smith is one of the few actors to appear across multiple Star Trek series and feature films, each time as a completely different character. In Star Trek VI, he's the Federation president. In Deep Space Nine, he's Trex, and in Voyager, Anorex, one of the franchise's most layered villains.
We must erase the entire species from time, every life form, every molecule.
Anorex in particular is a standout, a brilliant scientist who becomes obsessed with rewriting history itself. It's a heavy, tragic role, and Kurtwood absolutely crushes it, bringing both intellect and heartbreak. In Hitchcock from 2012, Kurtwood plays Geoffrey Sherlock, the strict head of the motion picture production code. This is the guy who infamously clashed with Alfred Hitchcock over Psycho, trying to stop the shower scene from ever being filmed. And honestly, who better than Kurtwood Smith to play a man whose entire job is saying no? He brings just the right level of bureaucratic stiffness to make the censorship debate feel like a battle of wills. Then, in the Amazon Prime series Patriots, Kurtwood takes on a role unlike anything he'd done before. Leslie Claret, a strange, hypnotic, deeply memorable character who blends comedy, deadpan menace, and emotional complexity. It's not villainous, not heroic, just weird in the best way, and it proves, once again, how broad his range really is. Kurtwood Smith's voice is practically a character of its own. He used it to great effect in animation, his Kanjar role in Green Lantern, Gene, the vending machine boss in the regular show,
Well, thanks, I guess.
Commissioner Gordon in Beware the Batman, and multiple Transformers characters. Even when you can't see him, you can feel that calm, authoritative force behind every line. And then came the twist of his career, the role that made him a household name. Red Foreman in That 70s Show, the gruff dad, the king of insults, the man who built an empire of comedy out of grumbling, sighing, and calling teenagers dumb asses.
My God, you don't remember what you said to Eric?
Kitty, I don't even remember how I got home.
What's fascinating is how much Red shares with his villain roles. The glare, the posture, the sharp delivery, but here all those intimidating qualities become funny. We fear Clarence Boddicker, but we love Red Foreman. Very few actors can flip that switch so effortlessly.
Clearly, I'm drunk.
Daddy, be my Valentine.
Do I have to hit you? Go to your room.
Despite all the terrifying, cold, and oppressive characters he played, nearly everyone who's worked with him says the same thing. Kurtwood Smith is kind, soft-spoken, polite, a complete professional. There is no ego, no posturing, just a thoughtful actor who brings depth and intention to every performance. And ironically, that gentleness is probably why his villains feel so authentic, because he's not playing evil, he's playing people. Kurtwood Smith isn't a villain because he growls or snarls or swings his fists, he's a villain because he thinks. Because he understands the power of subtlety, because he can walk into a scene, adjust his glasses, and instantly create tension. He's not just a villain we love, he's a villain we study, a villain we remember, and a villain who, no matter the movie, always makes things more interesting. Thanks for watching.